this classification of the oral anti-diabetic drugs. Okay, drugs that enhance the. Sorry. I think I need to record. Wait, I will record first. Okay, good morning everyone again. So last time we had discussed about the insulin. Now we'll discuss on the oral hypoglycemic drugs. Okay, drugs. These are the drugs. They are mainly given in cases of type 2 diabetes mellitus. Okay, so we already had discussed this classification in the last class also. So I'll just go through. So drugs which enhances the insulin secretion, okay, in which we have got sulfonylureas, meglitinide, okay, dipeptidyl peptidase 4 inhibitors, okay. These are the drugs that enhance the insulin secretions, okay. Then we have got the drugs that overcome the insulin resistance, that is bigonides and thiazolidinediones, okay. And then drugs that inhibit the carbohydrate absorption, in which we have got alpha glucosidase inhibitors, and others drug like dopamine agonist, bromocriptine, and sodium glucose cotransport inhibitors. And there are some parenteral anti-diabetic drugs which are also given in cases of type 2 diabetes mellitus, that is glucagon like peptide 1 receptor agonist and amylin analog. And when these drugs do not control the blood glucose level, we have to go with the insulin preparations also, okay. So in which type of type 2 diabetes mellitus we prefer giving the oral hypoglycemic drugs, okay. Age above 40 years at onset of disease, because usually above 40 years, okay, it is of type 2 diabetes mellitus. Then in cases of obese patients also, some oral hypoglycemic drugs like metformin, they decrease the weight, okay. And then next is the duration of disease of less than 5 years when starting the treatment. Then fasting blood sugar, okay, which is less than 200 milligram per deciliter, and the insulin requirement is less than 40 units per day, and there is no ketoacidosis or any other complications, okay. So in these conditions we prefer giving the oral hypoglycemic drugs, okay. So in type 2 diabetes mellitus, if the patient is on insulin, like for some certain conditions like patient undergoing surgical procedures or having infections, okay, in those conditions or in any complications, okay, in those conditions we usually shift this oral hypoglycemic drugs into insulin, right? And then so when to change into oral hypoglycemic again? So it is by looking at the requirement of the insulin and the blood sugar level, okay. If it is fasting blood sugar is less than 200 milligram per deciliter, or insulin requirement is less than 40 units per day, we can shift this oral hypoglycemic drug, we can shift the insulin into the oral hypoglycemic drugs. Okay, let's start with the sulfonylureas, okay. So sulfonylureas, it is the first oral hypoglycemic drugs that was invented, that was derived, okay, and it was found that this sulfonylureas has a hypoglycemic effect, okay. So you know the sulfonamide group of drugs like antibiotics, right? So these sulfonamides, they are mainly used for the sulfonamides are used mainly for as a antibacterial effect, okay, in cases of typhoid patient, okay. And it was found that these drugs, when used in cases of typhoid patient, they develop the hypoglycemia, okay. So from this effect, okay, the sulfonylureas were developed. So these drugs, they mainly enhance the insulin secretions or release, so they are also known as insulin secretagogues. Okay, so if you are asked insulin secretagogues, okay, these are sulfonylureas is also the insulin secretagogues, okay. And then Okay, mechanism of actions, that means they mainly stimulate the release of insulin from the pancreatic beta cells. Okay, so you can see in this flow chart, okay, the sulfonylureas, that it's a mechanism of action. Okay, sulfonylureas, it binds to the specific receptors, okay, that is present on the beta cell of the pancreas. Okay, and that will blocks the ATP sensitive potassium channel. So when it blocks the ATP sensitive potassium channel, okay, the cells get depolarized, and that will open the calcium channels, okay, which will cause the influx of the calcium inside the cells. Okay, and when calcium enters inside the cell, okay, the insulin present in the vesicles, okay, in the beta cells, will degranulate and release the insulin from the beta cells. Okay, did you get that? The mechanism of action. Okay, you can see in this picture again. So the mechanism of action of sulfonylureas is similar to that, okay, normal physiological of insulin release from by the glucose. Okay, so what happens in the, this is the beta cell of the pancreas. Okay, so similar to the glucose entry and releasing the insulin, okay, sulfonylureas also have the similar reaction. Okay, so what happens once the glucose enters into the cell, okay, there will be a metabolism, okay, and that will release the ATP, and this ATP will block the ATP sensitive potassium channels. Okay, so that closes the potassium channels, and the cells goes into the depolarized state at the in which the calcium channel starts opening, and there is an entry of the calcium inside the cells. So when calcium enters inside the cells, the insulin which are in the vesicles, okay, they degranulates, and they are released into the circulation. Okay, insulins are released into the circulation from the beta cells, right? That is about the glucose, okay, releasing the insulin. Similarly, the sulfonylureas, okay, they binds to the ATP sensitive potassium channels, okay, to its specific receptors. So that will close the potassium channels, okay, and then there is a depolarization of the cells, okay, which will open the calcium channels, and there is a influx of the calcium, okay, and this will cause the degranulation of the vesicles, which contains the insulin, okay, and they are released into the circulation. Okay, so that's the mechanism of action of sulfonylureas. So pharmacokinetics, so they are well absorbed orally, and they are highly plasma protein bound. They are metabolized in liver and excreted in kidney. So they can also cross placenta and can cause hypoglycemia in neonates. Okay, so sulfonylureas, they are first generation and second generation. In first generation, we have got tolbutamide and chlorpromide. Okay, tolbutamide, it is short acting, okay, which causes the lesser risk of hypoglycemia. They get rapidly metabolized in liver, okay, and plasma half-life is only 4 to 5 hours, and it is safer in the elderly patient also. Okay, so whereas longer acting sulfonylureas like chlorpromide, okay, they are longer acting, and there is a high risk of hypoglycemia. So these chlorpromide are not commonly used nowadays. So that was about the tolbutamide. Okay. Now say other group of sulfonylureas is the second generation sulfonylureas, in which we have got glibenclamide, okay, glipizide, gliclazide, and they are more potent and also commonly used drug. Okay. So again, they can cause hypoglycemia in elderly patients, so it has to be used cautiously. Okay. So the adverse effects of these drugs, second generation or sulfonylureas, is that they can cause hypoglycemia, okay, GI disturbances like nausea, vomiting, and flatulence, diarrhea. Allergic reactions can occur again, okay, which can lead to skin rashes, itching, and photosensitivity, and rarely it can cause agranulocytosis. Okay, and they are all the sulfonylureas. They are contraindicated in pregnant and lactating women, and it has to be given cautiously in cases of hepatic and renal impairment, as well as in cases of elderly patients. Okay, which can lead to the hypoglycemia. Okay, so for the second generation of sulfonylureas, okay, all the sulfonylurea almost they have got the similar they have got the same mechanism actions with similar adverse effects. Okay, second generations of sulfonylureas are more potent. Okay, and also some of the second generation are longer acting because of its active metabolites. Okay, and they are all most of them are again contraindicated in cases of or we have to use with cautious in cases of hepatic and renal impairment, and also in cases of elderly patients because there is a high risk of hypoglycemia. Okay, so you can just go through the other second generation sulfonylureas also. So now drug interaction again is very important. Okay, because this to control the diabetes mellitus, okay, the dose of the sulfonylureas or drugs, sulfonylureas or other oral hypoglycemic as well as insulin, that has to be maintained. Okay, otherwise what happens, there is a high chances of drug interactions and can lead to hypoglycemic state or does not control the glucose level. Okay, or hyperglycemia can occur. So phenylbutazone, sulfonamides, okay, salicylates, cimetidine, ketoconazole, insulin, lithium, and theophylline, they increases the sulfonylureas action and can precipitate the hypoglycemia. Okay, so these drugs they either can display the plasma protein binding, okay, or can inhibit the metabolism like cimetidine, ketoconazole. Okay, they inhibit the metabolism of this drug and can cause the hypoglycemia. Okay, and then also insulin, lithium, and theophylline, they can prolong the effect of sulfonylureas and can precipitate the hypoglycemia. Then there are the drugs which decreases the sulfonylureas action and can lead to hyperglycemia. Okay, so phenobarbital, phenytoin, rifampicin, corticosteroids, okay, thiazide and furosemide, they decreases the sulfonylureas action. Okay, now next group of drug is meglitinide, okay, in which we have got rapaglinide and nataglinide. These are also drugs which increases the insulin secretion. Okay, so these are also the insulin secretagogue, and they have got the similar action of that sulfonylureas, which again binds the receptors, okay, in the potassium ATP sensitive potassium channels and blocks this ATP dependent potassium channels in the pancreatic cells. Okay, so it's the similar mechanism action of the sulfonylureas. Okay, so that will depolarize the cell and there is an influx of the calcium cell which degranulate and increase the release of the insulin, okay, stored insulin. So, but however, this rapaglinide and nataglinide, it has a rapid onset of action with shorter duration of action. Okay, so that is the main difference with the sulfonylureas, which has a which decreases the risk of hypoglycemia. Okay, so their action is also to enhance the insulin secretions, and it occurs in presence of glucose. Okay, whereas sulfonylureas, it starts releasing the insulin, okay, whether there is glucose level is normal or not. Okay, whereas this meglitinide, only when there is a presence of glucose, it enhances the insulin secretion. So that is why it can control the postprandial hyperglycemia. Okay, these drugs are mainly used to control the postprandial hyperglycemia, which is given just before the each meal. So did you get the mechanism of action of meglitinide? Okay. Okay. Sudeep, are you there? Can you see the slides?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So internet connection के लिए गए फेरि. Okay. So कुन slide सम्म पुगेको थियो? Do you remember? You म त एक्लै पढाएर बसिरहेको छ. So यो ग्लुकागोन लाइक पेप्टाइड्स भयो?
भएको छैन म्याम.
भएको छैन है. कहाँसम्म पढ्यो होला अब? Okay, I will just back. Meglitinide?
अझै पता अझै
Meglitinide भयो?
यो भयो म्याम.
Meglitinide भयो. So meglitinide भयो भने त glucagon like peptide नै हो. Again I will repeat. Okay, no worry. So I'll again repeat about the glucagon like peptide. Next slide मा भयो थियो?
अझै एउटा स्लाइड अगाडि म्याम.
यो यसको अगाडि त meglitinide नै छ. ए adverse effects हरु भनेको?
हजुर म्याम.
ए okay. Okay, ठिकै छ. I'll start with meglitinide again. No. So presentation
म्याम रेकर्डिङ भएको छैन.
म रेकर्ड राख्दैछु. ल एकछिन.
म्याम साउन्ड सुनेको छैन.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so I was discussing about the meglitinide. Okay, so meglitinide, it also has a similar action that of sulfonylureas, which blocks the ATP dependent potassium channels. Okay, so that will cause the depolarization of the cells. Okay, and will cause the opening of the calcium channel, where there will be the influx of the calcium ions in the beta cells. Okay, which will cause the degranulation and increased release of the stored insulins from the beta cells. Okay, so it has a rapid onset of action with a shorter duration of actions, which makes difference from the sulfonylureas and has a lesser risk of hypoglycemia. Okay, and also it enhances the insulin secretion in presence of glucose. Okay, so meglitinide, it mainly controls the postprandial hyperglycemia. So it is given before each meal. Okay, so adverse effects of meglitinide are mild headache, dyspepsia, arthalgia, and weight gain. Okay, so these are given in type 2 diabetes mellitus as a monotherapy, or also is combined with the metformin, and it can be given alternative to sulfonylureas where the patients are allergic to the sulfonylureas. Okay, Next group of drug is the glucagon-like peptide drug. Okay. So first of all, what is glucagon-like peptides? Okay, these are the incretins. Okay, there are many incretins which are released in the gut. Okay, in response to the ingested glucose. Okay, like others like GIP. Okay, which is a glucose-dependent insulinotropic polypeptides. Okay, these incretins are released when we take a food. Okay, and these incretins, it induces the insulin release from the beta cells and inhibits the glucagon release from the alpha cells of pancreas. Okay, so we cannot give the glucagon like peptide because this peptide is degraded easily by the enzyme, that is dipeptidyl peptidase enzyme. Okay, dipeptidyl peptidase 4 enzyme. Okay, so we have got the synthetic glucagon like peptide agonist, okay, which are the analogs which are resistant to these enzymes. Okay, so these drugs, they activate the GLP-1 receptors and induces the insulin release and inhibit the glucagon release. Okay, so there is a mechanism of action of exenatide and liraglutide. Okay, so liraglutide is again longer acting than exenatide. So they are inactive orally and they are given by subcutaneous route 60 minutes before the meal. Okay, so this drug, they are not given by oral route. Okay, so these drugs are also used mainly as an add-on drug to metformin or sulfonylureas when the type 2 diabetes mellitus are poorly controlled. Okay, and it lowers the postprandial as well as fasting blood glucose level and glycated hemoglobin, and also lowers the body weight. Okay, the side effects of this glucagon like peptide are the nausea, vomiting. Okay, it can cause necrotizing and hemorrhagic pancreatitis, and when given with other insulin secretory drugs or insulin, it can also cause hypoglycemia. So next group of drugs are the dipeptidyl peptidase 4 inhibitors. Okay, so in this we have got sitagliptin, okay, vitagliptin, saxagliptin, alogliptin, linagliptins. Okay, so these are all the dipeptidyl peptidase 4 inhibitors. That means they inhibits the enzyme dipeptidyl peptidase 4. Okay, so they are the competitive and selective DPP4 inhibitors. That will, what will they do? These enzymes, as it breaks down the incretins, okay, like GLP-1 and GIP, so this breakdown will be inhibited by these drugs. Okay, so there will be more incretins present, and that will again cause the increase in insulin secretion and decrease in glucagon secretion. Okay, so these are also the drugs that are used in for the controlling of the postprandial hyperglycemia in type 2 diabetes mellitus. So these are used as monotherapy or adjuvant to the other oral hypoglycemic drug. So side effects, it can cause nausea, okay, loose stool, headache, rashes, and increased risk of upper respiratory infections, allergic reaction, and edema. Okay, so others like pancreatitis and hypoglycemia when given with the other insulin secretagogue or insulin. Okay, and we have to be again used cautiously in cases of renal disease. Now, next group of drug, and very important drug for type 2 diabetes mellitus is the bigonides. Okay, that is the metformin. Okay, in the mechanism of this metformin is that it lowers the blood glucose level by insulin-like effect on the tissue. Okay, these bigonides are not insulin secretagogues. Okay, till now what we have discussed are the insulin secretagogue. That means they enhance the insulin secretions like sulfonylureas, okay, meglitinide, DPP4 inhibitors, and GLP-1 agonist. Okay, these are the insulin secretagogues. Whereas bigonides, it is not the insulin secretagogues. Okay, so these bigonides, they act only in presence of insulin. That means, okay, to act this drug, there should be a presence of insulin. So it is not effective in cases of type 1 diabetes mellitus. So it is mainly effective in type 2 diabetes mellitus. The mechanism of this bigonides is that it activates the AMP dependent protein kinase. Okay, so major action is in the liver, which suppresses the hepatic gluconeogenesis and decreases the glucose output from the liver. Okay, and next mechanism is that also it stimulates the peripheral uptake of glucose in tissue in presence of insulin. Okay, so that is the mechanism, okay, which overcome the insulin resistance, okay, which is usually present in cases of type 2 diabetes mellitus. And other action of this metformin is that also it interferes with the mitochondrial respiration and promotes the peripheral glucose utilization through anaerobic glycolysis. Okay, so this is the mechanism of action of metformin. Okay, and other actions of metformin also inhibit the glucose, amino acid, vitamin B12 absorption from the intestine. So apart from metformin, previously there was another drug that is fenformin, okay, which is also the bigonides, but they are not used because of high risk of lactic acidosis. Whereas metformin, it is safer and has a lower incidence of lactic acidosis. Okay, and also other advantage of this metformin is that it does not cause the hypoglycemia like that of sitagliptin or sulfonylureas. Okay, there is a high chances of hypoglycemia, whereas metformin, it does not cause hypoglycemia, so it is also known as euglycemic agent. So main adverse effects of the metformin is the GI disturbances. Okay, most of the patients, they complain of these GI disturbances like nausea, diarrhea, metallic taste, abdominal pain, and anorexia. Okay, and also it causes weight loss. Okay, for the obese patients, it is advantage. Okay, so it can cause weight loss due to anorexia. Okay, lactic acidosis rarely with metformin. Okay, but it is common with the fenformin. And also it can cause vitamin B12 deficiency due to the interference with the absorption. Okay, and metformin, it is contraindicated in cases of hypertensive patients, heart failure, and severe respiratory, hepatic, and renal disease, again because of the high risk of lactic acidosis. So metformin, it is used in cases of type 2 diabetes mellitus, which is the first choice of drug. Okay, and next indication of metformin is also used in cases of infertility patient with a polycystic ovary in female. So as metformin is the first line of drug in cases of type 2 diabetes mellitus. Why it is a first line? So it has many advantages over other oral hypoglycemic drugs, like it is a euglycemic agent. Okay, so that means it does not cause the hypoglycemia. Okay, so there is one advantage of metformin. Then also it promotes the weight loss. Okay, and prevents the macro and microvascular complications of diabetes. Okay, metformin, it prevents the micro and microvascular complications. So there is no acceleration of the beta cell exhaustions, which can lead to the failure of the type 2 diabetes mellitus. Okay, whereas insulin secretagogues, okay, like sulfonylureas, there is a continuous release of the insulin, and at certain point these beta cells, they get exhausted and can cause the failure of the drug. Okay, so metformin does not have that property. And also it can be combined with the other oral hypoglycemic drugs. Okay, and other advantage is that also it decreases the SBA1C, that is glycated hemoglobin. Okay, Now next group of drug is thiazolidinediones. Okay, so this is also the drug which overcome the insulin resistance. Okay, which acts directly on the nucleus. Okay, in the gene that is they are the selective agonist for the nuclear peroxisome. Okay, ferritin activated receptor. Okay, so they acts on the nuclear peroxisome proliferative activated receptor gamma. Okay, if you remember, there are many types of PPR alpha, PPR. Okay, there is PPR alpha, PPR gamma. Okay, so these thiazolidinediones, they mainly acts on the gamma receptors. Okay, so that will reverse the insulin resistance, and it has a major action in the adipose tissues. So pioglitazone, this drug, okay, they again enhances the transcription of several insulin responsive genes. Okay, so they increases the insulin mediated glucose transport into the muscles and adipose tissues. Okay, they reduces the hepatic gluconeogenesis and increases the fatty acid metabolism and lipogenesis. It's the lipolysis and decrease plasma fatty acid and it causes the adipocyte turnover and differentiation is accelerated. Okay, so pioglitazone, it will enhance the insulin action. Okay, so the sensitivity of these insulin receptors will be increased. Okay, so that will cause also the effect of all the action of insulin. Okay, like transporting the glucose inside the cells as well as adipose tissues. In the liver, it inhibits the gluconeogenesis. Okay, then there is a increase in lipogenesis and fatty acid metabolism. Okay, inhibiting the lipolysis and decreasing the formation of fatty acid. Okay, and also increasing the adipocyte turnover and differentiation. So adverse effects of pioglitazone. Okay, it can cause edema, weight gain. It can cause headache, myalgia, and anemia. So there is a high risk of fracture in elderly patients, and there is a high risk of bladder cancer also. These drugs are again contraindicated in liver disease and congestive heart failure. So these drugs are given as a monotherapy or adjuvant to sulfonylureas or bigonides in type 2 diabetes mellitus. So next group of drug is the alpha glucosidase inhibitors, in which we have got acarbose, okay, miglitol, voclibose. Okay, they have got the similar mechanism of actions. Okay, so it inhibits the enzyme alpha glucosidase enzyme, which mainly digests the carbohydrates. Okay, so that will prevent the absorption of the carbohydrates. So these are again drugs which are given just before the meal. Okay, and it helps to control the postprandial hyperglycemia without increasing the insulin level. So these are also given as a monotherapy, okay, or in combination with metformin or sulfonylureas. So main adverse effects of this alpha glucosidase inhibitors is that it causes flatulence, diarrhea, and abdominal pain. Okay, so when given with sulfonylureas, it can produce hypoglycemia, okay, which is again treated with glucose, and it is contraindicated in cases of renal failure and should be given in patients with liver disease with cautiously. Then we have got amylin analog, okay, in which we have got pramlintide, which is the synthetic analog of amylin. This amylin again is usually produced in the beta cells. So this again causes decrease in glucose level by reducing the glucagon secretion from the alpha cells, and also it delays the gastric emptying, and it has a central mediated anorectic action. Okay. So this amylin analog, okay, these are given, again it is given by subcutaneous route, okay, used concurrently with the metformin or sulfonylureas, okay, to control the postprandial hyperglycemia. And also sometimes this pramlintide, it is also given with type 2 in cases of type 1 diabetes mellitus also. So adverse effects: nausea, vomiting, anorexia, okay, hypoglycemia when given with insulin or insulin secretagogues. Next, we have got the last one is the bromocriptine, okay, which is the dopamine agonist drug, which acts on the hypothalamus. Which acts on the hypothalamic dopaminergic control of the circadian rhythm of hormone release. Okay, so and it reset is to reduce the insulin resistance. Okay, so it can be again used alone or added to the metformin and sulfonylureas in cases of type 2 diabetes mellitus. So bromocriptine, it is usually given in the morning time because it acts on the acts for the on the to control the circadian rhythm of the other hormones. Okay. The last one is the sodium glucose co-transport 2 inhibitors, okay, in which we have got dapagliflozin, okay, which is a new drugs. It acts on the kidney, okay, it blocks this transporter in the proximal tubule, okay, so that will inhibit that will cause the increased excretion of the glucose, okay. So this inhibits the major which is a major transporter for the glucose transporter in the proximal tubule. Okay, so that will produce the more glucose in the urine. There is more excreted in the urine. Okay, and reduces the blood glucose level. Okay, the side effects are again it can predispose to the urinary and genital infections. Okay, it can cause electrolyte imbalance and there is an increase in urine frequency. Okay, so that was about the oral hypoglycemic drugs. Okay, now I'll just go in sort about the management of diabetes mellitus also, because already we have discussed so much in the previous classes also about diabetes mellitus. So for the management of diabetes mellitus, the goal of therapy is that again to decrease the symptoms, okay, to eliminate the micro and macrovascular complications, and to have the normal lifestyle for the patient, right? So the glycemic target for the diabetes mellitus are usually we must go through the SbA1c, okay, which should be less than 7%. The pre-meal glucose should be 90 to 130 milligram per deciliter, and the postprandial should be around 150 milligram per deciliter. So as for management of diabetes mellitus, okay, first of all, the non-pharmacological management is to educate the patient about the diabetes mellitus, its complications, okay, the diet, okay, about the exercise and the care that should be taken during the illness, and screening for the complications of diabetes mellitus. And in cases of diabetes mellitus, there is high risk of having other disease conditions, so those should also be treated, like obesity, hypertension, dyslipidemia, and cardiovascular disease. So as for management of type 1 diabetes mellitus, the drug of choice is the insulin. Okay, so insulin therapy, as we have already discussed, it can be given as an intensive insulin therapy and conventional insulin therapy. Okay, and as for type 2 diabetes mellitus, the first choice of drug for type 2 diabetes mellitus is the metformin, unless it is contraindicated. Okay, and next, if the SbA1c is okay not controlled with metformin, we have to add on the drug like sulfonylureas or other oral hypoglycemic drugs like thiazolidinediones, okay, GLP-1 receptor analogs, amylin analogs, and glucosidase inhibitors with metformin. Okay, so if metformin alone does not control, then we have to add on drug. Usually, in second step, usually along with metformin, we give the sulfonylureas, okay, unless it is contraindicated. Again, if this combination, two drugs combination is not effective, then we have to go with the other multiple oral hypoglycemic drugs. Okay, and lastly, if not satisfied with the above therapy, lastly we have to manage with the insulin with or without metformin. So this is how the type 2 diabetes mellitus is managed. Okay. So this already we have discussed in the previous class, in which conditions of diabetes mellitus insulin is given. Okay, that is in cases of type 1 diabetic mellitus, then post pancreatectomy diabetes, in cases of gestational diabetes mellitus, and in type 2 diabetes mellitus, where there is failure of oral hypoglycemic drug, underweight patients. Okay, then to tide up the infections, trauma, and surgical for patients who are undergoing surgical procedures. Okay, and any complications like diabetic ketoacidosis, non-ketotic hypersmolochroma, and gangrene. In cases type 2 diabetes mellitus, we have to go for the insulin. Okay. Similarly, oral hypoglycemic drugs are indicated in type 2 diabetes mellitus with age above 40 years, obese. Okay, duration of disease less than 5 years, fasting blood sugar less than 200 milligram deciliter, then insulin requirement is less than 40 units per day, and there is no other complications in cases of type 2 diabetes mellitus. Okay, so that is the management of the diabetes mellitus. So that finishes your drugs for diabetes mellitus. And with that, okay, few slides on glucagon. Okay, you should just go through this glucagon also. Only few slides are there. I'll just finish that also. You know, glucagon is also a hormone that is secreted by the pancreas. Okay, that is the alpha from the alpha cells of pancreatic islets. Okay, and for the regulation of glucagon secretion also, it decreases when there is decrease in glucagon level. Okay, there is increased sympathetic stimulation. High protein diet increases the glucagon secretion. Okay, and hyperglycemia, insulin, and somatostatin, they inhibit the glucagon secretion. Okay, so that is the regulation of the glucagon secretion. And the effect of the glucagon is that it mainly releases the blood glucose level by breakdown of the glycogen into glucose, conversions of the lactates and amino acids into the glucose in liver, and also releases the glucose in liver. Okay, so that is the action of the glucagon. So other actions are, again, it is a potent inotropic and chronotropic effect on the heart, and it relaxes the intestine and decreases the gastric acid secretion. So main uses of this glucagon is in cases of severe hypoglycemia. Okay, so in emergency conditions where patients has to be treated, okay, or patient like in cases of type 1 diabetes mellitus, okay, when patient goes severe hypoglycemia, we can give glucagon. Okay, so usually recombinant glucagon is used, and sometimes also in cardiogenic shock. Okay, because it mainly stimulates the heart in beta adrenal. It's to stimulate the heart in beta adrenergic block treated patients. Okay. And next, also during the radiological procedures, okay, to relax the bowel. Okay, and the adverse effects of glucagon is it causes the nausea and vomiting. So this is the brief discussion about the glucagon. Okay, so I think that much for today.